in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, July 2013. Hoagland was a former chef who had settled into life as a real estate appraiser, a seemingly contented husband and father.
Until he simply wasn't there anymore.
And the immediate circumstances were, they were tailor-made for suspicion and panic.
Right.
When police arrived at the Hoagland home, they found a scene that just screamed foul play. Everything essential was left behind.
His passport, his cell phone.
His blood pressure medication, his car was in the driveway. The only piece of the puzzle that suggested any planning at all was the fact that he was supposed to be at JFK to pick up his wife, Lori.
And he never showed. That absence is the first massive red flag, isn't it?
Huge. Lori's coming back from a 17-day trip to Turkey. She lands, she texts, nothing.
Radio silence.
For 2 hours, she finally takes a cab to a relative's house in Brooklyn. It wasn't until she contacted the wife of Robert's boss that they realized, oh, he hadn't shown up for work either.
And for investigators, seeing that untouched medication and the passport, that makes the decision easy.
Absolutely. The crime scene, or lack of one, suggested he was either taken forcefully or something catastrophic happened so suddenly he just couldn't leave.
So our mission in this deep dive is to follow that agonizing 9-year investigation, track all the dead ends, the suspicion of murder.
And then, finally, get to the shocking resolution that solved the case but left behind a far more complex psychological mystery for you to consider.
Okay, let's unpack this by looking at the last known movements of Robert Hoagland on Sunday, July 28, 2013. This day is absolutely critical.
It's the only real evidence we have of his state of mind.
He started the morning like any other, buying bagels. Then, around 6:45 a.m., he pulled into a mobile gas station.
And this gas station stop, which was documented by surveillance, is where the whole narrative just splits in two. He bought a half tank of gas for his wife's Volkswagen Golf, the car he was supposedly going to take to the airport.
The act of a husband preparing for a mundane chore.
Exactly. But then he also made a second purchase, a large folded map of the entire eastern United States.
A paper map in 2013. So you have a man preparing to be a dutiful husband one minute, and the next, he's planning a massive road trip like it's 1985.
It's a huge contradiction, and it's the key piece of evidence that tells us this was not an impulsive decision, despite the items he left behind.
So what happened after that?
After that crucial stop, he went home. A neighbor later saw him around 10 or 11 a.m., mowing his lawn and talking to his 24-year-old son, Max.
And that moment of domestic peace, it masks this immense pressure cooker the family was living in.
And that pressure cooker was Max. The sources are really clear. The family was struggling intensely with Max's severe drug addiction.
Robert Hoagland had actually changed his entire career path for this, right?
He did. He left the restaurant business, where he was a successful chef, to take an appraising job at a friend's law office, specifically to free up time to better help his son.
The irony is just. That effort to simplify his life and focus on family healing led to the most dangerous kind of stress.
It really did. Just before Lori returned, 2 family laptops were stolen. Robert was convinced Max had taken them to trade for drugs.
Which led to a confrontation.
A confrontation that escalated way beyond a typical family argument. He went full vigilante.
He actively confronted Max's associates in Bridgeport over the theft. That is not just stressful, that's terrifying.
Of course. It puts him in contact with people who might pose a genuine threat, which immediately fueled the murder theories when he disappeared.
And it connects directly to the money. 3 days before he vanished, $600 was withdrawn from a family account.
So was that Max, or was Robert preparing to pay someone off? Or maybe preparing for his own radical, immediate exit?
This is where the whole accidental victim theory just breaks down for me.
It has to, because while Hoagland was buying a paper map, he was also systematically dismantling his digital life.
Ah, the digital footprint. What did they find?
Investigators found repeated, focused computer searches on his work machine for an address in Rhode Island. He was fixated on a location far away.
Okay, so that's interesting.
But this is more forensically compelling. Hoagland had downloaded a program designed specifically to clear or scrub internet search history just the month before his disappearance.
Wow. So this is a deliberate, proactive step toward identity erasure.
It paints a picture, doesn't it? The man mowing the lawn that morning was already a ghost in training. He had planned to cut all ties.
He understood the basics of digital hygiene. He just needed to execute the physical escape, and that map was his guide.
Precisely. If we look at this through a psychological lens, Robert Hoagland was facing intolerable internal pain, a concept psychologists call psychic.
That deep emotional anguish that often drives self-destructive behavior.
Exactly. She didn't want to end his life, but he desperately wanted to end the life that was causing him that pain. The digital scrubbing and the map purchase, they were acts of radical self-preservation, a form of preemptive identity suicide.
Despite those clues, the initial search was all about tragedy.
All about it. Police focused on Lake Zoar near Sandy Hook. Friends and neighbors, convinced he couldn't have just run away, mobilized. They circulated hundreds of flyers.
And the family was firm. He would never just walk away.
That certainty fueled the narrative of murder, especially as the case went cold. When the investigation Discovery Show Disappeared covered it in 2016, the whole segment revolved around the theory that Hoagland was killed.
Probably by the associates he confronted over the stolen laptops.
That's what they focused on, and that is the real tragedy of his silence, though, the shadow it cast.
On his son. For years, Max, who was already struggling so much, had to live with the public suspicion that his father's disappearance and potential murder was tied directly to his own addiction problems.
Robert Hoagland, by choosing silence, allowed his troubled son to become the prime focus of suspicion. It's devastating.
And that silence was deafening. The purchased map, though, did influence a flurry of tips.
Right, which kept the case nominally alive but never led anywhere solid. There were these failed sightings in Warwick, Rhode Island, later in Brookfield, Connecticut.
Where a witness claimed to see him leaving in a car with New York license plates, which is an interesting detail.
It is. Another tip even placed him near a correctional facility in New York. So the map became a distraction, a breadcrumb leading searchers all over the place.
Police admitted the case was incredibly frustrating because outside of that one gas station stop, the trail ended, quite literally, in his living room.
9 agonizing years passed. The initial energy just waned. It was replaced by annual memorials. Friends gathered in 2014 to launch paper lanterns, mourning someone they assumed was lost to violence.
The family was just suspended in limbo, unable to grieve or move on.
And then, in a moment that simultaneously ended the mystery and intensified the psychological puzzle, the truth came out. We jump forward to December 5, 2022.
That's when Robert Hoagland was found deceased in a residence in Rock Hill, New York.
Rock Hill, New York.
You're talking about less than 100 miles, barely a 90-minute drive from the home he abandoned in Newtown.
After 9 years of searching the country, he was just 2 hours up the interstate.
Unbelievable.
He had been living there since around November 2013, so about 4 months after he vanished, under the completely assumed name of Richard Rich King.
So how was he found?
It was a tragic twist of fate. He died, and his roommate found him. Sheriff's deputies, investigating the death, found paperwork that contained the name Robert Hoagland, establishing his true identity.
And authorities quickly confirmed there was no criminal aspect to Robert Hoagland's disappearance.
It is such a bizarre confirmation to hear after nearly a decade of fear. It also reminds us that while this feels unique, it isn't entirely unprecedented.
Right, there was that other Richard Hoagland case from the 90s.
Exactly. Disappeared in 1993, only to be found decades later living under the stolen identity of Terry Szymanski. Self-erasure, while rare, is a tested method of solving one's problems.
So let's look at the mechanics of his new life as Richard King. This is where the true crime story turns into a masterclass on running away in the digital age.
He secured his new life using 2 critical methods, cash and anonymity. He answered a Craigslist ad for a roommate in Rock Hill, paid his rent in cash,
And reportedly told the roommate that he had recently separated.
no official lease, no bank transfers, no paper trail linking him to that address. He leveraged the gray areas of the cash and short-term rental economy to stay invisible.
But the biggest question is how he maintained his professional life. He was a real estate appraiser. That's a licensed profession. How do you keep working in that field for 9 years without verifiable ID?
It's a remarkable feat. Sources indicate he continued to work as a real estate appraiser for a company about 20 miles away.
So how did he do it?
Well, since no ID was found on him after his death, he had clearly figured out a way to circumvent standard employment procedures. He was likely paid entirely under the table.
Maybe as an independent contractor or something. Paid in cash.
That's the theory. Maybe utilizing a company car or shared transportation to avoid needing an up-to-date driver's license.
That requires constant vigilance, extreme isolation. It means he couldn't open a bank account, couldn't fly anywhere, had to operate outside of every official system we use every single day.
He traded the complexity of his old life for the constant low-level paranoia of his new one. But he found a way to use his old skills, too.
Chef skills.
We know he volunteered to cook Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve dinners at a local soup kitchen. It's a poignant detail, a small public connection to the former chef he used to be, while maintaining that private wall around the appraiser named Richard King.
So the motive for this radical, calculated departure was what? The ultimate aggression.
That's how it was described. A desperate attempt to find a simpler, less materialistic life. He wanted out from under the weight of his son's addiction and the stress of his marriage.
He sought cessation from his problems by ceasing his identity.
And that is the ultimate act of selfishness. He prioritized his own relief from that psyche over the fundamental well-being of his wife and 2 sons.
He put them through 9 years of fearing he had been tortured or murdered. And worst of all, he let the suspicion stay squarely on his already suffering son, Max.
That betrayal is so hard to reconcile with the measure of peace the family eventually received. It was reported that Hoagland left behind a journal.
Right, which confirmed his love for them despite his choice to leave.
A journal full of love, but the absence of a simple phone call inflicted years of psychological torture.
It just encapsulates the contradiction of the whole case. He claimed love through a static document left behind, while actively demonstrating this profound lack of empathy through 9 years of silence.
The simplicity he sought came at the cost of his family's reality.
So what does this all mean for us? The Hoagland case is a stark and frankly uncomfortable reminder that even in our hyper-connected digital surveillance age, total self-erasure is still possible.
It is. If you are determined, can pay in cash, and are willing to live on the margins, you can disappear, sometimes just 90 minutes down the highway.
It forces us to ask tough questions about every missing person case we see.
Indeed. And the ultimate takeaway is the moral and psychological calculation at play here. Robert Hoagland ended the identity he found intolerable to escape the psychic kick that was crushing him. You have to consider what magnitude of inner pain a person must be enduring to inflict such extreme, protracted trauma on their own loved ones simply to achieve a simpler life.
And was that simpler life lived in paranoia, isolation, and constant deceit? Was it truly worth the immeasurable cost to the people he claimed to love?
It's a chilling calculus, and one for you to wrestle with long after this dive ends.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the disappearance of Robert Hoagland. We'll see you next time.